Welcome to Game Savers Podcast, your next-gen gaming podcast for news, reviews, previews, impressions, analysis, and roundtable discussions involving past, present, and future video games. My name is Wayne, and Alex is not with us. No, sorry, he is. Alex
I'm here.
Is with us.
Come on.
Tony, first blunder. I mean, we're straight in and we've got a blunder already. We're lost without Tony. Tony's not with us today. Tony is not feeling too good, and he's had to take a week off. So get well, Tony. Hope to have him back very, very soon. But who we do have here is we have Alex, as always. Hey, Alex, how's things?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, playing lots of video games.
Yeah, of course, playing lots of video games at the moment. It's May,
excellent.
right?
And we couldn't have this episode without having Ken back. Hi, Ken, how's things?
Thanks for having me back, Wayne. All good over here.
I mean, it's a Resident Evil episode. What would a Resident Evil episode of Game Savers be without Ken? You know, we'll have to have
Resident Evil.
Yeah,
right.
so
you
it's
can see I've updated my background as well. So
yes, lovely. But for those watching the YouTube video, Ken's got that excellent Castle Dimitrescu, as I believe it is now pronounced. We know how to pronounce it after having played the game. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you will see footage of the game live as we're talking here. We will minimize that to about the first hour's worth of the game. So if you haven't played it yet and you want to avoid that, I would advise going and listen to the audio only podcast. Yeah, so it's now May 2021, the month we've all been looking forward to. Mass Effect Remastered is out very, very soon. Biomutant is out this month. Returnal is already out. But the big one that we have all been looking forward to for quite some time now is Resident Evil Village. I have played, I think, about 3/4 of it, about 8.5 hours. You guys, Alex, how far through it are you?
So I actually finished the game, and let me tell you, I'm a bit surprised when you talk about where you are. You say 3/4. No, you're not.
Oh, okay. We'll probably touch on that later and explain why.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think I'm 3/4, but clearly not. And Ken, what about yourself? How far through are you?
Completed the first day. I always have. Well, I always do. I do take the day off for a Resident Evil release and have done for the past number of releases. It's pretty much my day that I can just absolutely blitz for it, get the entire story. So I can just avoid spoilers. And then from that point, then I can just go back and replay it over again and just keep the love going. Yeah.
Did you hear that, Wayne? That's how you avoid spoilers.
I know it's how you avoid spoilers, but I like the thing with me is I haven't finished this and I'm kind of taking my time with it. I like to play it in the dark, so we'll have to wait until nighttime whenever the sun goes down and whatnot. I don't have great curtains and all that crap. But the other thing for me is, I've waited 3 years for this game. When did 7 come out?
2017, I think.
Yeah.
4 years ago. Yeah.
4 years ago, yeah.
I personally, I don't want to wait 4 years for something and then for it to land, blitz it in a day, and it's over. I know you say, Ken, that once you play it, you're probably on your second playthrough already.
Same here.
Like when I finish a game, it tends to go to the side, and I'll maybe come back and replay it in a year's time, 2 years time. But I want it to last. Like even at the minute, the last time I did play it, I wasn't trying to carry on with the story. I'm getting ahead of myself with the podcast here, but I was I have a habit of doing that. I was just going and looking for side things because I'd got certain keys and certain objects that I could unlock certain pathways, because it's a wee bit kind of open worldy in a way, you could argue. Or maybe more Metroidvania is a better explanation.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's Metroidvania. I think it's pretty much in the vein, like just to explain a little bit how the game is built and what the game is actually. I think it's pretty much in the vein of like old school Resident Evil games. You're like, if you think back to earlier entries in the series, even the first one, usually you're in one bigger semi-open environment and you just like explore it and like open up new doors or new ways, and that's how it's going in this game too, just combined with the first person view that you had in the last game. And I think this pretty much carries the feel that early Resident Evil games had, while also I would say borrowing kind of a best of from every mainline game in the series.
Yeah. But before we get too deep into talking about this game, I first want to get your impressions. And I know we've touched on this on previous podcasts, but what were your thoughts on Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Biohazard, as some call it? Alex, start with yourself.
Yeah, I think, and I still think so, even after playing Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 7 is the best entry in the entire series.
Whoa, that's
hands
okay.
down.
Bold statement, I have to say.
But just so, like Resident Evil 7 had so many things that I like. The intensity, it is creepy as fuck, and it, again, borrows so many things from earlier entries. Even though you were playing in first person view, I still all the time had the feeling like playing like an old school Resident Evil game. And even I wrote this in the review that I wrote for publication back then. I felt like the house itself, or the house itself from the Bakers, felt like a character in itself. It felt alive. It felt like lived in. Yeah.
Ken, what about yourself? Resident Evil 7, a hit for you or a miss?
Oh, absolute hit. I think I said on the probably the first podcast I was on that it was that game that it just made me fall in love with Resident Evil all over again. Resident Evil 6 definitely left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and then obviously you had Revelations that sort of came between that point of 6 and 7, which kind of made you go, okay, there's still hope for this franchise. But Resident Evil 7 hands down was just that game that made you go, this is why I love Resident Evil.
Yeah.
It ticked all the right boxes. It had the horror, the suspense, it had the great gameplay, and just the visuals as well. Like Resident Evil games have always been outstanding for just, graphic, quality. You look back at the earlier entries of the just of the decor, and you look at the console that you're playing on, you're like, how is this possible? Resident Evil 7 was just a beautiful game. That RE engine was just a phenomenal build.
One of the best engines, seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's my all-time favorite Resident Evil game, but it's definitely in the top 3.
Yeah. I like yourselves. I absolutely loved Resident Evil 7. I thought it took everything that was important about Resident Evil and it put it in a very, very modern package. Like, I'm sure yourselves a little bit skeptical about going first person. I was kind of like, Resident Evil in first person, really? Literally within 15 minutes of playing the game, you're just like, this works. This absolutely definitely works. If anything, I would even say that it could be better. I think it is better than third person. I think it works better for a horror experience to be seeing things through the eyes of the character that you're actually playing as.
Yeah, I think that's a thing about Resident Evil in general. We have like two paths how the series can evolve from now on. We have like the first person entries, and if you think back, it even goes back to Gun Survivor and Dead Aim and what they were called. And then we have like the third person games, and I think both are valid points to continue on. And I think this is how we're going to see it from now on. Like, we have the first person games, we're going to have the third person games, and then in a couple of games they're like, well, surprise, we're going to reinvent the whole thing all over again.
It's inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like the first person view, like it did add to the horror. Because the thing is, like with the original trilogy, the whole thing of it being in the camera view that it was suffocating. You were going down tight corridors. You had a very limited field of vision. When you go to Resident Evil 5, and even 4 and 5 and 6, it's a little bit more open. There's a little bit more exploration going on, which, especially when you're running about and you can see like zombies in the far distance, and you're like, right, okay, I'm gonna go get them. But then with 7, you're going down like tight corridors in this house, and you have literally like that view. Like, you have just what you could see out of your eyes. You can't see behind you. You can barely see in front of you, around corners. And I think that just adds to the horror so much more.
Yeah. Pretty well, exactly what you're talking about there is more or less why I'm asking this question about how you feel about 7, because I want to know how you feel 7 and Village compare to each other, because Ken, as you say, that sort of claustrophobic, those tight small areas, that lots and lots of small corridors where you can't see where you're going, you can't see around that next corner till you get to it, and there's probably something there. I found there to be a lot less of that in Village. So far, I have to say, like the village itself, when you're in the village, as you say, similar to 4, big wide open spaces. You can see quite a bit ahead. There was many times where I was actually able to take out enemies before they had spotted me, which to me, I don't want to say is that Resident Evil, because I think of Resident Evil as a series which is constantly evolving. I don't like people saying, "Oh, this isn't very Resident Evil," because what is, what isn't, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
But what did you think? In what ways would you say Village differs to 7?
Well, I think what Ken touched on, like 7 has a lot of claustrophobic areas, and I'm just going to talk about the game like to up to a certain point, and up where you are, it certainly feels like this game is not as claustrophobic. It's more open-ended, and I feel like even though it feels and plays similar to Resident Evil 7, it borrows heavily from Resident Evil 4. Like even the way that how you're introduced into the game. This is like, hey, hey kids, you remember Resident Evil 4? Here you have it all over again, but in a good way, in a very good way.
Yeah,
not just like a cheap knockoff.
That point kept getting made in the lead up to this whenever we were seeing promotional material and stuff, and I kept thinking to myself, I understand why people are comparing this to RE4, but to me, it had a look and a feel and a tone that was just very different from RE4. So I was kind of like, this isn't very RE4, but there's moments and there's bits and pieces where you just go, yeah, this reminds me of that part of Resident Evil 4, or this reminds me of that boss or that encounter or that area. And there's definitely big nods to RE4.
Just think about the first big Lycan, like everybody saw in the trailers with the big hammer that came on. The first thing I thought when I saw him was like, oh yeah, this reminds me of Resident Evil 5, like one of the early areas where the big guy with the hammer is hunting you down.
Yeah,
it's so similar. But I think, like I said before, I don't think it's like a cheap throwback. I think it's a respectful nod to the past of the series.
Yeah.
And from there on, they actually continue and evolve a bit more. But I'm not going to say where and when.
Cam, what do you reckon comparisons between 7 and 8? Anything in particular?
I think with it, like, to me, I definitely seen it as, almost like a love letter from Capcom to Resident Evil 4. Like, we all know Resident Evil 4 is probably to this point, was one of the biggest Resident Evil games. And there was a reason, there was a very good reason why it had those elements of horror, not as much as it did in the first trilogy. And then you sort of got a little bit more action, which was getting in a bigger audience. And Village is definitely very similar in terms of that. In terms of like the comparison of like the open worlds compared to the claustrophobic areas of Resident Evil 7, I did miss that. Now, obviously, we all know we've got a certain part of the game which sort of is very heavily influenced by that, and you can tell that there's parts of that they've taken directly from Resident Evil 7. And I appreciate them. To me, this is the new generation of Resident Evil 4. This is the game that Resident Evil 7 was for the fans. It was 100% for the fans. Resident Evil Village is a game for the wider audience, and I think it's a game that could definitely heavily bring a lot more people in.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I do agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
I think probably another way to describe it is probably like Resident Evil 7 on steroids. Yeah. It's bigger, it's badder, it's bolder.
Well, one thing I think this game's got that Resident Evil 7 didn't have is flair and characters. Like the Baker family within 7 there wasn't a big difference between each of the characters. You had that family of people, and they were all, I mean, they weren't, I was going to say they were normal humans. They're far from normal humans. but you get
they
what
were
I mean.
Normal humans.
At one stage. Yeah. Whereas in this, now I don't know about you guys. I avoided the trailers beforehand. Like Alex, you mentioned the werewolf with the big hammer. That's way on. That's early on in the game. I didn't even know about him. So when he turned up, I'm like, what? Because I knew there was going to be werewolves. I didn't know there was going to be one that was kind of like intelligent enough to wield a weapon. I thought that was great. But within the trailers, there was a big, massive push towards Lady Dimitrescu. And
Yeah.
I just thought that's your threat. That's the main enemy. That's who you're going to be seeing throughout this game. And I was surprised to see so much more. There are so many other characters in the game, and they play such a prominent role compared to just that one. And I was over the moon about that, because I almost thought, to a degree, people had kind of spoiled the character of Lady Dimitrescu with the whole, I don't want to say thirsty gamers, but that's exactly what it was, you know. It just kind of, I'm meant to be afraid of this character, and everyone else is going like, you know,
like thirsting all over, right?
Yeah. so I think the characterization that you've got in these enemies and these foes that you go up against is really, really refreshing compared to RE7. Yeah. I think that's one of it's a real strength in this game.
And I think also that's one like really respectful nod back towards Resident Evil 4, like with the Duke. You get a merchant again, and even that he mentions at some time, I don't know if you heard this so far, when you're in the menu and like purchasing something, he then all of a sudden starts to say, "What are you selling?"
Oh, that's I haven't heard that. No.
Yeah, and then he just says, just something an old friend of mine used to say.
Oh, brilliant! That's an excellent nod. I'm gutted that I haven't heard that. There was a couple of times where he just kind of like, I went to, and I was waiting for the, what you buying? And you know, it never did come. Again, another great character. The thing about the Duke is you just cannot help but compare him to the merchant from RE4. And I don't know about you guys, but very few characters stand up to the merchant. As simple as
absolutely.
He was.
He is Resident Evil.
Hands down. You could buy. I know that if you pre-ordered this game, you could replace the typewriters with the little cassette players from RE7 for your save points. I mean, I didn't bother with the deluxe edition. However, if they had have replaced a skin of the Duke, if you could have replaced them with the merchant, take my money.
That would have been great.
My money. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the performance of the game in terms of visuals, sound design. We'll touch on a little bit on the ray tracing that's available on the next gen consoles. I'll start off with this one because I just want to say it is so refreshing to get a game on day one that runs flat out with no issues. I did not have so much as a single bug, a single crash, a single glitch. And you guys mentioned the RE engine earlier. Do you know what that stands for? The RE engine?
Is it Resident Evil?
It's not. It isn't.
It's not. All right.
I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but everyone thinks it's the Resident Evil engine, and it's not.
I'm just going to Google this real quick.
Someone Google that while I waffle on. But yeah, the performance of the games, it looked to me, I did not notice frames being dropped. It seemed to be a solid 60 the entire time, despite the fact that they came out and said it was 45 frames per second. Well, it's not. There's no judder. There's nothing that sort of distracts you from what you're playing. Alex?
So the RE engine is RE standing for Reach for the Moon engine.
Yeah, they're not.
Reach. But yeah, like if you see the picture now, sure, it makes sense. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The sound, I do think the sound could be a little bit better. There's sometimes, I always play games with good cans on, and there's at times where there's maybe a enemy to my right, and the sound just, it's not making that clear. I'm kind of turning around, and the direction of the sound isn't always great. But apart from that, I'm so happy with the performance of the game. Alex, did you put ray tracing on?
Of course, I put ray tracing on.
And
I mean, I'm Mr. Ray Tracing. Actually, like I put a ray tracing on everything if I could. So actually, I need to back up a little bit because when Capcom announced how the game will perform on different systems with different settings, they said something along the lines of 45 frames per second with ray tracing on. And I remember us talking about this and we were like, this seems really odd. And I think you mentioned there was one game beforehand that had like a 45 frames per second target.
Yeah, it was the Arkham Asylum remasters.
Yeah, so here's the thing about that. It's not 45 frames per second. This is more like the game can maybe drop to 45 frames per second, but it's 99.9% it's 60 frames per second with ray tracing on. So if you have it turned off, turn it on. Trust me, it enriches the game so much. Ray tracing in this game differs from what you see in Miles Morales or what you see in Control, where it's basically reflections. Ray tracing in this game is more like the whole lighting, and you can really see how the whole lighting changes. It becomes more realistic. Like the trees and buildings, they really create realistic shadows. Even you yourself create realistic shadows, which look better than before. And so if you haven't put it on, put it on. Thank me later.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'm definitely going to put it on. The thing is, the reason I haven't is because I already think the game looks gorgeous, you know, specifically indoors, like inside the first main big area. Well, it's castle. I'm sure people are aware of that. Once you're inside the castle, oh damn, it looks so good. I would like to see some side-by-side comparisons of ray tracing on, ray tracing off, and see how that goes.
Yeah. To be honest, the differences are not that major. It is like the feel of the scenarios change a little bit. It's a little bit more lighted. It's a little bit more contrasty. But also one thing that I want to touch on, since we're talking about the performance of the game, like the loading times, or more like the lack of the loading times.
Yeah.
If you played, I don't know, have you played the demo?
I only played the maiden demo
on
PS5.
So there was a loading time. There was like a 20-second loading time throughout the entire game. I mean, I finished it so far. Throughout the entire game, there's not one loading screen whatsoever. It's usually cut to black, 1, 2, and back in.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I hadn't even considered that, because I've got to the point where I think once you play 3 or 4 games on these new consoles, you almost forget about that benefit, because you just start taking it for granted. The games are
absolutely,
there we go, and we're playing. So that's another fantastic benefit.
And like the last, I wouldn't say benefit, because I came off of Returnal, and Returnal had like the best dual sense implementation ever, probably. There's some dual sense implementation in Resident Evil 5. It's a little more minor depending on the weapon that you're holding. Like if you're having like a shotgun and want to aim down sights, the L2 button is a little bit harder to press, but it's nothing compared to Returnal. But that was ultimately the reason for me to go with the PlayStation 5 version, not the Series X version, because usually I play all multi-platform games on the Xbox, but the DualSense, best controller.
Sold. So you went to the dark side then?
Yeah. something dark side.
Ken, you're playing on the Series X as well, yeah?
Yes, I'm indeed. And I think one of the things I was going to say there was another bit of Capcom magic. You know, if you look at any other next-gen game that's came out, Call of Duty's a big one for it. You look at the game size, like over 100 gig. How big was your Resident Evil Village? Like mine's sitting at 30 gig.
Yeah.
How can they fit that? Like that game with that performance, with those visuals, like everything in 30 gig, like a round of applause to Capcom for that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let me touch on something here real quick, because like we had this whole discussion, like cross-gen games, next-gen games. Think about Cyberpunk, what a train wreck it was on last gen, and then we have like Resident Evil Village that's coming out on last gen and next-gen consoles, and it looks on both systems, like on both generations, absolutely comparable. So this just speaks to me like CDPR really dropped the ball there, and Capcom just shows it is possible if you put in the work, if you treat last gen consoles with the proper respect and put the work in.
It wouldn't be a Game Savers podcast if we didn't at some stage find a reason to shit on CDPR about Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Since we're on that topic right now, I'm gonna drop this real quick so we have that off the radar. Dark Souls, continue.
do a shot every time Alex mentions Dark Souls. Okay, so let's talk about the actual gameplay itself. And when I say gameplay, I'm talking about the combat, the weapons, the pacing, the structure, the puzzles in the game, the enemies that we come across. Ken, what do you reckon? Good stuff?
Oh, 100%. I think one of my big favorites of the game was the bringing back the red and blue rooms. Anyone that's played any of the older Resident Evil games, you know, will understand that tool is just absolutely necessary in any Resident Evil game. So whenever we lost that feature in Resident Evil 7, it was a bit sad. So it was nice to, you know, to actually go back now, and you can actually then go through all the different places you've been before and actually see how far you've completed it.
Yeah.
Especially with you know, the certain elements that's been brought in via Resident Evil 4 of the crystals, the wee shiny things just hanging on a wall.
Yes.
It was an absolute nightmare as well at times. There were so many, like, as much as I loved it, there were so many times that I hated it, because there was one room in Castle Dimitrescu, which was, if you go in when you go into the main entrance and you go off to the right, there's the room with the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Long, yeah, for so long in that room, it was red. And I pretty much got up to the point of almost finishing, you know, the castle section and going, right, what have I missed? There, you know, there has to be something. Went down, kept looking around, and noticed a little shiny like dot up in the very top corner, and going,
same again. I think I entered that room maybe 3 or 4 times before I actually managed it.
Fuck you, Capcom.
Just to explain this, basically, anytime you go into a new room, on your map, the room shows up as red, and that means that there is either a collectible or ammo or health or anything to be found that you haven't picked up yet. Once you've emptied the room, you scored the room, and you've got everything on your map, that turns blue. And it is, as you say, it is so helpful. It is so useful. But on the other hand, it digs into my OCD, something shocking. Like whenever I walk into a room and I see that it's red, I am not leaving that room until it's blue. But sometimes there will be something that you just can't find, and you have to move on.
The funniest thing is,
that room you talked about, I assumed that you couldn't get the other thing until you went through. I assumed you came back with the lift in another part of the game, and it was like, well, I'll get whatever it is then. So it came back that way, and it was like, I'm still in this room, and it's still red. And you say, you look around, and you just get that wee glimmer in the wall.
What I did sometimes, I was just like standing still, not moving at all, and just waiting. Is there something like blinking somewhere?
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Cam.
I was gonna say, the funniest thing is, when I was actually playing through the game, like, all I could think in my head is, this is going to absolutely destroy Wayne and his OCD. just because I know that's something, like, I know that's something that you're really big on. And I was playing through the game, just like, part of me was gonna, like, you know, try and like kind of spoil it for you, but like the other part of me is just like, he's just going to be sitting there like crying his eyes out at times, just like, why can I not find anything in this room?
The thing is, like, one of the very first rooms you go into whenever you get to the village, there is a drawer with a lock, and you don't get lock picks until a little bit further in the game. And by the time you get lock picks, that initial area is kind of locked off. You can't quite get back there until a little bit later, and it just played in my mind. It was like, what's in there? What is in there? There must be something really good in there. And I think when I got back, there was like 5 handgun bullets. I was so underwhelmed.
It's like Schrodinger's drawer, right?
I think it's really interesting that you know, there's this whole, the game's great. The game is absolutely great, and I've just asked you, you know, gameplay, enemies, weapons, and all that stuff. And the first thing you went to was this little feature, because there's so many little things that have just made me go, someone has play tested this game into oblivion and tightened it up so well. I mean, I've got a list of things, and I'll go run through them here quickly, because I think they're just great things that make the game just effortless to play to a degree. You know, takes away all those little annoyances that you find in other games. One of them is, whenever you come across a crate that you can smash, you don't have to switch weapons.
Oh yeah,
the
genius.
Knife, hit it with the knife, and then switch back to your thing. You just hit A, and even if you've got a gun equipped, he'll take the knife out and smash it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, thank you for doing that. It's such a simple thing, but it makes things so great. Another thing I'm really, really happy about this one, especially after coming off the back of Resident Evil 0, puzzle items do not take up inventory space. Thank you, Capcom. Thank you. No backtracking because you dropped the crank because you needed to pick up, you know, some other ammo somewhere. It helps so much, and it just makes the game much more of a pleasure to play. And again, another couple of wee things. You can have little dangly things on the front of your shotgun and possibly other weapons, which will give them slightly more like, do more damage or quicker reload or something like that. The thing is, it's a little bright cartoon character, and I think it completely takes away from the atmosphere.
But it's Mr. Raccoon. Come on, it's like Mr. Raccoon.
I hate it, but there's an option there in the menu. You can turn it off. You still get the effect of the little add-on to your weapon.
The thing is,
but it's not dangling about.
You cannot just see it like when you walk around and it's like swinging around.
Yes.
You can actually also hear it when you walk and you hear like the click clack of the thing. Oh, that was annoying. Like, yes, definitely. Totally.
And then one other wee thing, and I thought this was great because I've seen it it bugs me in so many other games. There's enemies that I have shot that have sort of like enemies in the air. I've shot them, killed them, and they've fallen to the ground like out of bounds into an area where I can't get to. But if I go as close to the edge as I can, and even if they're a good distance away, further away from what it normally is to pick things up, it's letting me get those things. Like I've had it so many times in Borderlands where I've killed something and then the loot or whatever it is, or the ammo drops and falls off the edge of the cliff and it's gone. Bye. See ya. It lets you get all those wee things. And again, especially it's survival horror. So that those extra 5 bullets could matter. That extra little bit of money could matter. It's just great that they thought about that, and that it's in there.
But there definitely was a really good reason for that. Just and it is like it's a game tip for anyone who hasn't played it yet. The merchant is your best friend, in this game, because you don't have any item boxes like any other, like most Resident Evil games. You don't have the option like in Resident Evil 0 to drop something where you can go back and pick it up. It's pretty much Resident Evil 4 style. If you drop something, that's it. It's gone forever. So, you need to get as much money and resource as you can throughout the entire game. You can obviously, like, if something is dropped and you haven't picked it up, you can go back and you can get that. But when it comes to like picking up like extra ammo, or especially any of the currency, if it's currency that is dropped, or a crystal skull or any form of treasure, it's really needed. So that's obviously why they put that feature in, and like I applaud it as well. Like there was a point in like in the courtyard of the castle where I'd shot a few enemies in the little garden bits that you can't get into, but you just go over as close as you can, and boom, there you go, you've picked up your treasure.
Yeah, since you're talking about enemies, that's what I like about the game a lot. If you think back about Resident Evil 7, it's just like molded the entire game from start to finish. This game has so much enemy variety, even just in the beginning section and in the castle. You have Lycans, you have the big Lycan with the hammer, you have flying enemies that I cannot really tell what they are. You have zombie-like enemies like in the jail segment of the castle, and so much more interesting stuff coming later on. So I think this is a huge step up from the last game. And also the combat, it feels so much better than in Resident Evil 7. It feels snappier, feels more responsive. So just like Wayne said, they probably play tested the hell out of the game. And thank God they did that, because the game is better for it.
The thing as well, like in terms, I was gonna say, in things of like in terms of story, obviously Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8, and they did say from Resident Evil 7 that this was going to be a new trilogy of games. So there is an expectation of a Resident Evil 9. Now, what happens in that? Obviously, got a complete village to sort of get ideas of what's going on. But the thing, like, if you look at Resident Evil 7, if you look at even like the character of Ethan, the main protagonist, he's just a normal guy. He's your everyday average guy. So Resident Evil 7, like him shooting a gun, that's probably the first time he's ever done it, or the first time he's ever tried, killed something or anything like that. Yeah. And the thing is, when you go, by the time you get the village, obviously with the beginning, it does fill in a lot of backstory. There's an evolution of that character, and that's where you see that in the combat style. I don't know if any of you went through the Winter's house at the beginning and had a look at the bookshelf and what was
of course
there.
I did, of course, yeah.
100%. That's why that combat system is so much better. He's read that book.
Yeah. Also, like since you're touching on Ethan right now, like, you probably thought the same, but I just want to ask you guys, do you think that there's someone somewhere in the Capcom offices who just hates hands?
I knew that was going to part of me wonders, is it a nod to Star Wars? Is there a George Lucas fan in there? Because he was quite keen on lobbing off arms and hands and stuff like that. Yeah, poor Ethan. I think whenever I was playing it, in my head I was thinking about, Crystal Dynamics are like, we really like to beat the crap out of Lara Croft. Lara Croft? Lara Croft?
Laura Croft.
We really like to beat the
guys.
crap out of Lara Croft, and Capcom are just like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets absolutely brutalized.
This is completely off topic now, but I just picture you right now standing in Jeopardy. Name who's like a famous game character? Laura Croft, Donkey Kong, Princess Zoldor, or Sonic.
Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, something you were touching on there, Alex, is about like, the controls being so much better. Or not necessarily better, but the controls being really, really good. They are, but at the same time, they've managed to sort of keep them they're not fast and snappy in the way the Call of Duty is. Because if it was, you could literally just kind of bomb about. There's still bits where you kind of slow down and you have to aim slowly and precisely to get that shot and stuff. And they've got that good balance of keeping the controls tightened in so that there's still tension, but still letting you feel like you're perfectly in control. And you didn't miss a shot because the controls were off. You missed a shot because you missed the shot, And I think, again, hats off to Capcom for pulling that off.
Yeah, definitely.
Just exceptional.
Well, just the shooting mechanics felt a lot like The Last of Us to me, because The Last of Us is actually pretty close to that. You kind of feel the heaviness of the weapons, of the guns that you use.
That's a good comparison. Yeah. Let's move on to the story, or at least we'll talk about the first chunk of the story. Because, as I say, I haven't quite finished the game yet, and I really don't want it spoiled on our own bloody podcast.
So here's the ending. Darth Vader is Ethan's father.
If you are as sensitive to spoilers as I am, you might need to knock this in the head right now if you haven't played the first chunk of the game. So this is your one and only official spoiler warning. We are now going to start talking about the story. Spoiler. And can I commence that with a little bit of a rant? Because I hate when trailers give away big story beats in a game, or something that would have been a moment in the story that you then see in the trailer. And right at the start of the game, and I know it's at the start, I don't think that takes away from the point that I'm making. Chris Redfield walks into the house and murders Mia, right?
You know nothing.
Well, okay. Now I know there's going to be more to that. There's probably going to be more to that, and I'd probably said that.
You know nothing.
Right? No, hold on. But the point is, whenever I was playing that section of the game, it's not the fact that happened. It's the fact that I knew it was going to happen at that point in time. So instead of me going, holy fuck, Chris Redfield shot Mia, instead I was like, oh, this is the bit where Chris Redfield shoots Mia.
Come on, it's like the first 5 minutes of the game. Like,
why?
Come on. He's getting all angry there.
Why? If there's a part of a movie or a TV show or a book or a game that has weight, why does it matter that it's at the start, the middle, or the end? If you then have that emotional weight taken away from you prior to actually seeing it during the experience, I think it would have been such a better moment had I not known. And the weirdest thing is, I found out about it through watching a Resident Evil 7 recap. Someone like just out of nowhere watching this recap to go, and then we know in this one that this happens, and I was just like, oh damn. I think it would have been a good moment to have experienced first time during the game as you were playing it.
Although I think I'll counter that in the fact that I watched every trailer. I watched gameplay. I unfortunately don't have a PS5, so I didn't get to play Maiden. But I did watch, a couple of YouTube channels who were playing it and seen all the bits in that. I said that I wasn't going to play the village and the castle demo, but I was too weak and I ended up I couldn't resist. I did it the weekend before. I needed that wee fix. But I'd seen pretty much every bit of information that accumulated up until that point, up until the point of me playing the game,
yeah,
you don't know anything.
Like, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. And I heavily applaud Capcom for that. Obviously there's parts of the game where you're going through and it's very familiar because it's there, and we all know that, like, with Lady D, like, she's been everywhere. She's been the face of this game. And obviously all three of us know. Anyone else who doesn't know, pretty much that's like your first hour and a bit of the game, and that's it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
move on from that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, even Lady Dimitrescu is being built up through the trailers. Like, she's like the biggest entity in the game, the biggest enemy that you fight, and it's actually really not the case. She's in one part of the game, and that's it. And maybe to touch on what you said about Mia and the trailer beforehand, it will make more sense to you how and why when you finish the game, and then I'm pretty sure that you then will revise what you're thinking right now. And I think this is something that Capcom did.
We'll talk about that when we come to it.
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to explain anything, but
I think we will do a follow-up podcast to this once everyone's finished the game. Hopefully Tony as well. And we'll talk about the story in full.
Yeah. Just one thing that I want to add, and don't worry, there are no spoilers at all. I just want to compliment Capcom on how they made the trailers, because you feel like they're giving away stuff, but they're actually not. And that's something that very few games and even very few movies do very, very well.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm happy to talk about the first big chunk of the game. That whole the section in the castle, the boss fight with Lady Dimitrescu, who turns into almost maybe you'll disagree with this, but I kind of think like a T-virus mutation dragon type thing around the castle. All that, the whole time I was playing that, I was like, why is this happening 4 hours into the game? What in all hell's going on? What else am I in for? What else am I going for? And only talking about sort of the structure of the game, after that section, you're given one item, and then you have to go and find another 3 items, which is another 3 areas in the game. Judging by what you guys have said, I think there might be a little bit more than that. But we'll say no more. Yeah, I think that was a brilliant move, an absolutely brilliant move from Capcom, that they kind of, tricked us into believing that was the game, that was the antagonist of the game, and that's who would be spending most of our time.
But I mean, then to draw some comparisons to Resident Evil 4, if you remember, like, all the promotional material about Resident Evil 4, it all feels like, this game is going to play in this village, in this town, and then it's actually not. And more I think of it, I can just think about this. Resident Evil 4, you start in a village, you go to a castle. Resident Evil 8, you start in a village, you go to a castle. Come on, that's obvious.
I mean, well, one thing, like, I'll try and avoid as much spoilers as I can, but it sort of touches on this similar vein. I actually find there was a lot of similarities in Resident Evil 7 in the comparison of what way the game goes. You probably noticed that, like, obviously from where you start to where you finish and what you have to do. But one of the things I love about the whole gameplay experience is, with going that direction, is obviously you're aware that you've got 4 items that you've got to go collect. Obviously we'll try and avoid spoilers for anyone else of what those items are, but but you obviously have to go do that. And the thing that you always find with a lot of games where you do something like that is you'll have like a central hub, and that is the village. And you always find that those sort of games, when you go back to that central point, you're pretty much just going, you're going to there to basically get to the next part. But the thing that I loved about this game was every time you went back to the village, there was something new. There's something new to explore. There's so many pieces of that village that are still locked off, and it's not like when you first get there, that's it over. It keeps evolving throughout the game, and that's one of the things I loved about that. That every time you came back, there was something new to do.
Yeah, there's an incentive to explore the village each time you come back to it. And often whenever I think in a Resident Evil game that I'm going back to an area that I've already been, well, I've cleared it out. It's a a safe space.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's definitely
remember the hunters in Resident Evil 1.
Yeah. Well, one feature in the game that I remember reading about this, but I think people had looked at achievements and read a little bit into it that maybe they shouldn't have. The hunting aspect of the game, where you can kill animals to collect meat and then bring them to the Duke, who then cooks you meals. There's not really much of a hunting element there, is there? I mean, every now and again you come across a fish, a pig, or a chicken, and you kill it. You know, it's not like I think people were lined up and ready for something along the lines of the hunting from Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption or Assassin's Creed or something like that. And it's not like that at all. It's not like a tedious, boring side quest that you don't really want to be doing. It's easy to do and it's worth doing. Those upgrades are good upgrades.
I think one of my downfalls in my gameplay was I had came across some of the animals prior to the cooking section being available, and not actually remembering that this is what's meant to happen. So I was running about with I think it was a couple of chickens at one point, and I had it in my inventory because I had nowhere else to put it. You couldn't do anything with it, and I got to the merchant, and I was like, I need to clear space. Here you go, have some chickens.
Yeah.
And then the next
I did the same thing.
Yeah, and then later on in the game when I got back to the merchant and realized that I can do this now, I was like, damn it.
I done something similar with a couple of jewels where I was looking at the jewels and I was thinking, I bet you they can be combined to something greater than the sum of its parts. And I'm just going to sell it anyway. But then I noticed, and again, just another little smart thing, just a tiny little thing that makes the game so much better. Whenever you get treasures that can be combined, there's a couple of little squares and it shows you how many parts you need, so you know to hold on to them. Really?
It tells you at the bottom as well. So we'll have in brackets below if you know how valuable it is not like what currency. It'll tell you like if it's valuable, very valuable, or rare. And then beside that it'll say that that you can combine it. It's combinable, which I did appreciate that, because especially with Resident Evil 4, that was one of the things that I pretty much, if I got something, I just would have sold it straight on for the money, not realizing, oh wait, I can combine these items. And then there's so many times where you'd get something and you'd have like a jewel and you're like, oh, this should be able to combine into that, but it doesn't. You're like, right, well then what's the point? I'll just sell them.
Well, it was much more like of a puzzle game in Resident Evil 4 in itself, just to find out what's combinable, what's not. Resident Evil 8 makes it so easy, and this is probably one of the things so you can really tell they play tested the hell out of this game. And I think there's this RENet thing going on where they like invite people for play testings and everything. And they probably did this for the last couple of years with just inviting fans over. Hey, play test this game, even way before this was announced. This is, in my opinion, to top this off, one of the most complete Resident Evil games that you could get at launch.
Yeah. 100%.
I think we're all on the same page here in terms of how we feel about this game. I don't think anyone on this podcast would give it less than a 9 out of 10. It is.
I would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, same here.
You would give it 9 out of 10?
No, I'd give it less.
Okay.
Well,
but,
I mean, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I don't think. I think we're thinking about the same thing. Why? But I don't think we should tell Wayne.
Okay, no. if it's story related, please do not. But okay, so apart from the story, non-spoiler related stuff, what would you change? What do you think isn't good about this game, and how would they fix it? I've got two things. First off, one thing, and this applies to any game that features this, I absolutely despise fake boss fights. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. There's a bunch of games. Jedi Fallen Order does it a couple of times, and it happens, I think, at least twice so far in this game. And it's where you're pitted against a certain enemy, right? And it's a real tough fight. You're really struggling. You're pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you die, and the cutscene kicks in, and the story plays on because you were meant to die. You had to die. I hate that. I absolutely.
Are you talking about the opening?
It's very early. Yeah, the first time
you can actually finish the opening with killing.
Beat that.
Yeah. There's a challenge for that.
Fair enough. That's interesting. Yeah. I didn't realize that. But it still kind of bugs me that that's a thing, you know.
Yeah, I know.
The second thing I kind of dislike about this game, and it might seem nitpicky, but we're talking about the little things that make it really good. So I'm going to talk about the little things that bug me about the game. Ethan's breathing is fucking incessant. Like the entire game, he's huffing and puffing and sighing. And don't get me wrong, I get it. Like, you know, the guy's getting absolutely brutalized throughout it. He's running around castles trying to avoid, you know, 9-foot women and stuff. I understand
getting fingers beaten off.
But it just seems constant that it's like, give us a break, mate. Can I turn this off? Can we have an option for this? I'm sick listening to you. Aside from that, yourselves, any little tweaks or changes that you guys think the game could benefit from?
Nothing I can talk and hear about.
Oh, okay, so story related.
Yeah,
stuff.
unfortunately, yeah, same here. I mean, like if I was to give it a score, I'd be comfortable giving it an 8.5. Like it's a phenomenal game. It would probably fit in terms of like Resident Evil games. It probably fit in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
I adore this game, and I think as the more I will keep playing it, because that's what I do. Resident Evil games, I will play them to death. Resident Evil 7, I've completed probably at least 20 times by this point, just because I just love going back to them. And I'd say I do the same with Village, and usually by that point, my view on it does go up a lot higher. It's not a perfect game, but it's a bloody well good one. Like it's definitely a good contender.
One thing I just remembered as well, which is like just so bad, is the controls of the boat. The boat controls.
Yeah, they're okay. They're absolutely okay. But yeah, I'm actually like pretty much in the same boat as Ken here. I would actually score it a little bit lower. I would score it at, and you're probably gonna hate me for it, but it's more like a 7.5 to 8. Actually, I think the game at times is the best the series could be, and at other times it's the worst that I've seen this.
Okay, interesting. Would you say the game is front loaded? Because that seems to be what a lot of people are saying. Like the first half of the game is considerably better than the rest.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. But I mean, like for me, like one of my favorite parts of the game is the second house that you go to, which is the house Benevenito. Like to me, it's what I want in a Resident Evil game.
I think we can talk briefly about that. Yeah, that is
all right.
That is a section of the game where combat doesn't play a part. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I thought you just finished the castle so far.
No. I'm further on than that. Apologies.
Oh, okay. Then let's talk about the second house. Come on.
Okay,
like this is by far the best part of the game, in my opinion.
Apologies. We are limited on Zoom here. We've got 9 minutes, so we do need to be brief. Apologies. Okay, so I have played this game. It's the second part of the game. It's where we did say there's 4 things that you have to go off and collect. Again, if you're still listening and you don't want to hear about this, probably best to turn it off. This game, no combat involved. It is essentially one big puzzle, and it is, from what I have played so far, the scariest part of the game. It delves into the psychological horror aspect, a hell of a lot heavier than the previous sections. And would you guys make any comparisons to other games that were previously released?
You probably know like one game that I would compare it to right now, right? And I think we're all agree it's like hands down PT.
It is PT.
It is 100%.
It is so heavily influenced by PT.
Yeah,
even to the point there. Oh, sorry. Even to the point that there is one corridor that you go down, which looks exactly the same with a telephone off on the left-hand side. Yeah. There was one point I was just like, "Is this PT? What's going on?"
Also, another thing, if you think about the trailer, I think there are 2 trailers for Silent Hills, and there was one like with a giant baby, and then all of a sudden there's this like baby crying, and this big deformed baby was just like crawling towards you. I'm like, I was actually screaming, and I was like, okay, I need to take a break here. Oh my god,
that creature was on my screen for the splittest of seconds, because as soon as I seen it, I turned and I bolted. And then the second time it showed up, exactly the same. I did, out of curiosity, I went to watch someone else's stream of this just to get a better view of it. And Ken will tell you this: I don't like babies. I just don't like babies. So see that the baby crying, that sound, and then that image, just horrible, horrible. That night, whenever I finished that section, I got back to the Voyage and just went, I was going to play for another hour or so, but I'm just stepping away from this game right now because I did not like that at all.
The moment for me, the moment for me when I knew that this was not going to be fun was, I think it's when you, what room was it? Yeah, sorry, it's when you go into the wee surgery on the left hand side, and there's one of the lockers that you can open, and I noticed this was straight. I walked into it and was able to close the door, and I went, okay, this is going to be this portion of the game. That was the moment I knew
very
I had to start breathing.
Very Alien Isolation or Outlast, those kinds of games.
Oh yeah. My wife was sitting behind me at the time while I was playing it, and pretty much if I ever go through those sort of games, my reaction, I generally don't scream. I will jump, but my reaction is generally no. My wife the whole time is just laughing so much that I can hear her go over my headphones.
There was a point in that section where everything actually blacks out, and because I'm playing it at night, the whole room just went dark. I'm just sitting there going, I need something to happen. I need something to come back on here again, because I was just waiting for my cat. He would have perfectly timed it to jump up on me just as everything's in absolute pitch black, Fantastic part of the game, and I honestly would love to see them. I mean, this game feels like a bunch of different games. You've got that action Resident Evil, and then you've got that psychological horror Resident Evil. I would love to see them be brave enough to do a spin-off series and just focus on this the psychological horror and forget about the guns and stuff. Something along the lines of, we've said it before, Alien Isolation, very hardly any combat in that game. The Outlast games. Is it Outlast, if I got that right? I think it is.
Yeah. Outlast, doesn't have any weapons whatsoever.
Yeah, same again. I would love to see them experiment and do something a little bit different,
I think it's definitely something that they could go down, a route that they could definitely go down. I mean, they've shown that they can do psychological horror, and they can do it really well. Obviously, every Resident Evil game at this point has had some form of weapons, but obviously with with most of the games, it's more limited resource is your horror of that moment of, right, I've got 5 bullets and I've got 2 zombies coming after me, but I can escape to this room and hopefully be safe. There was always, you were more thinking, but with the House Benevenito, it was just straight up, what the hell is going on? What do I do? I actually did spend a good 10 minutes actually trying to, because the puzzle itself was just there was hardly any clue to what was going on or what you had to do. And you really did have to think. But then you also had those moments of, right, I think I've got to go get something for this, but I haven't been over here yet, but do I want to go over there? I've got nothing to protect me at all. And I think that was just it was great. It was absolutely fantastic psychological horror.
Absolutely, and just playing hide and seek, not elaborate, but in a good way. It felt just like you said, Alien Isolation, Outlast, very, very welcome change.
I think we should leave it there. We have discussed quite a chunk of this, and I do think we should come back whenever we've all finished this game and have even just a brief chat about how we feel about the story. And I think that could make for a fun chat based on what you guys are saying. It sounds like the end could be a little bit divisive, controversial. I don't know.
Yeah, that's maybe a good thing, but I would advise you experience it for yourself. And once you have done so, I think we will come back for a spoiler podcast episode, and I really want to see your reactions. I want to see and hear how you feel about it. What do you think about it?
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks. If you're watching this on YouTube, do us a massive favor. Give us a thumbs up on that video. Please subscribe. Ring the bell if you want. You know, no one cares about that. But press all the YouTube buttons. You know, it helps us a lot. Leave a comment below. Start an argument. I don't know.
Yeah.
Alex, you run our Instagram
Yeah,
channel.
sure.
Where can we be found on Instagram?
So yeah, we're on Instagram for a couple of weeks now. It's a Game Savers podcast, all in one word. There's daily, almost daily content every day. I mean, that's daily, of course. Stuff that's not on a podcast, some additional stuff that you won't be seeing here, and still looking into expanding what's going on there. Head over to Instagram, join the comments, talk to us, send us messages, like the pictures, and also, this is the most important thing, save the pictures, because saving is the new like on Instagram.
Excellent. And if you want to listen to me talk absolute nonsense on Twitter, I'm there at GameSaver_Wayne. Haven't got too many followers, so it'd be nice if someone showed some love over that direction. Ken, thank you very much for coming on the podcast again. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always good fun having you on here. Alex, I guess the same, I suppose.
Yeah. And I get my money in the right.
Absolutely, there will be 7 pence sent as usual, your monthly fee. So we'll wrap it up. Thanks for listening, and look forward to the next episode. I think next week we will be talking about Mass Effect with the new release coming out, the remastered versions. Claire will be having her debut Game Savers podcast session with us. So we will leave it there. And as always, don't forget to save your goddamn game.
Do it.